ZeroState with Jack Lloyd, where philosophy matters.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Jack here. I'm super excited for today. Got a very fun comedic guest coming on. He's a very fun guy. I was actually just on a show with him last night. And so we actually are going to be, I think actually kind of sandwiched. We did a show last night. We're going to have a show right now, and I think I'm actually going to be on his show tomorrow. So it's been a kind of an interesting back-to-back fun time. But before we get into that, I just want to really quick just let everybody know that right now the Voluntarious comic campaign is heading into its last days, and we're actually only about $50 away. It looks like someone just supported. We have 69 backers. Yeah, I know, very nice. So we're at 69 backers. I know it's a nice number to keep up, but we want to keep going and hit that next stretch goal. So be sure to check that out on Indiegogo. Voluntarious Origin 6. We are making the trade paperback, which is the compendium of the 6 Origins issues. So it's super awesome, and we are 100% funded. So this is definitely happening, and we have some bonus goodies. It's going to be an awesome time. So right now, we are going to switch into gear with our guest coming on right now. This is Kareem Maize. He is a voluntarist who happens to also be a Mises Caucus state organizer in Pennsylvania. He is also host of the Essential Libertarians show, and he is a co-host of the Inappropriate Thoughts or Outlawed Thoughts show, which is actually the show that we were just on and doing last night. So welcome, Kareem. How are you doing?
Yo, what is up, Jack?
What is up? So yeah, I feel like I've been seeing your face so much lately because we just had that last night and see some other stuff you've been posting. Obviously, we share a lot of common interests and a lot of common activities. So it's just been great to get to know you and see you, especially recently with all the stuff we've been doing. So could you tell us a little bit about you in terms of your background and what led to your journey to becoming a libertarian voluntarist?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I'll start with going all the way back. I was 12, 13. This is in the early 90s. I was listening to a lot of pop punk, and I actually, for lack of a better understanding at that age, trusted the government. Or at least I did the pledge to the flag, and I did what all the other kids and teenagers were doing. One of my friends called me one day and said, we're listening to Black Flag and Anti-Flag. And I'm like, wait, what's that? They're like, they're against the government. I'm like, that's not good. We shouldn't be doing stuff like that. And they're like, come to us, we'll hang out. And I'm like 13 or 14. Everybody in my family freaked out. Why are you going to like mosh pits? And then I started going to anarcho-punk shows. I really liked their message, which was basically, at that time, it was a different time, keep in mind, anti-war, anti-Bush, anti-racism that still existed. And they were basically against the authoritarian right, which people, might have some nostalgia about. But if you go all the way back to the early 90s, 2000s, it was actually the right that was doing cancel culture. There's a funny meme, if you want to picture it. It has this woman with Harry Potter. She's like, and it has Iraq War. She's like, So there were people like that. Don't play D&D. We can bomb Iraq. So that starts happening. I was in the anarcho-punk phase for about 3 to 4 years till my family's like, please get a job. Please do this. And maybe that was the best thing, because after a while I said, these guys are cool. I love the philosophies. I love the band in particularly called Crass. Even though they had some anti-capitalist rhetoric, I appreciated the anti-authoritarian aspects of them. I guess if you really want to go technically what they are, they're libertarian left, even though they were anti-Marxist and socialist, which was good. I didn't fall in that trap. But they didn't really seem to have a goal going forward. I like Bitcoin. I like my Xbox. I like this interview we're doing. And if it's just chaos all the time, you can't build capital or infrastructure or actually have meaningful, in my opinion, movements towards bringing humanity forward. So it was, I was going to say, I was probably 15, 16. My dad was an old school liberal. He still is. And he's watching Bill Maher, which I think is one of the last few people, if you can say, on the left that has some sanity left. And he just says, hey, how are you doing? How's your campaign going? And I see this guy, look up, and his people are cheering. And then he's like, hey, Ron Paul, how you doing? And I saw Ron Paul in the debate with Giuliani, and I'm like, this guy makes sense. It wasn't that Ron Paul said anything prophetic. It's just, being from the Middle East, I knew my teachers were lying when they said, George Bush is just bombing because they don't like our freedoms or whatever they were telling me back in the day. I was like, no, that's not true. I have family in Egypt, and we spend time playing Tekken and drinking Pepsi and doing everything people in America mostly do. This is BS, and they didn't want to hear it. But Ron Paul actually just said, look, they're mad because you're bombing them. I'm like, hey, that makes sense. Being from the Middle East, I don't want to see people bombing the Middle East. Even if there's bad people there, it wouldn't make sense. It's like me saying there's gang activity in Florida, I'm sure. Yeah, how, would you guys be okay if I like bomb Miami or Fort Myers or anything? Just come on, man. There was Crips and Bloods. I had to do something. So to me, it just seemed illogical and crazy. And Ron Paul was the only one saying that. He smashed Giuliani in that famous debate, which we all know. Angelo brought that up. That was a good moment for me. And then I was a libertarian for a while. I did get involved in telling people about Gary Johnson. I did try and vote for Obama one time because I thought, hey, we can end the war, but this guy's nuts. But it didn't do that. And then, long story short, if I'm really going to break it down, I got to, talk to Gary Johnson on like Google Hangouts way back in the day. And I got to kind of talk to some libertarians that were pretty influential to me. But there was still something bugging me because from the anarcho-punk, I like the anarcho a lot. But I didn't like the fact that, I didn't seem to be going anywhere. And a lot of my friends who still stayed on that path either got off of it and led productive lives or, were just kind of nihilistic. And I was like, man, you know what? I love this libertarian philosophy. What if you just combined the anti-authoritarian aspect with an aspect that's more capitalist so I can still enjoy being a software engineer and doing stuff like that? I get he's said a lot of controversial things. I don't agree with a lot of the ways he communicates with people now. I don't agree with what he said to me, Cox, particularly Natalie. But one of my friends who was a big Gary Johnson guy, was my roommate, said, you got to watch Adam versus the Man. I'm like, okay, I'll watch Adam versus the Man. Watch Adam versus the Man. I'm like, this guy's angry like I am, got that punk rock kind of feel, wants to kind of, take down the system, has just got that energy, he's angry. And one day he says the only anarchists are anarcho-capitalists. I'm like, what's an anarcho-capitalist? I looked at it at Wikipedia. I'm like, nah, I don't really think I believe that. But, is there anybody else that believes it? So I Googled Adam Kokesh and I found a show called Anarchast run by Jeff Berwick, which, you were on. That actually the first Meacock I ever really saw an interview was with Foe when he had her on with Yes Please. So I was like, okay, these people like really make sense. This Jeff Berwick guy just says, hey, we believe in the non-aggression principle and we don't believe in treading on people. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good. And I was kind of an agorist ANCAP at that point. I'm like, no, you don't, voting's not cool. Knocking the, doors isn't fun. The cool people don't get involved in politics. And I really thought that. I'm like, I can win arguments on Facebook. I'm a cool guy because I can quote some Rothbard. And I started reading some Rothbard. I looked in some things. G. Edward Griffin really impressed me and kind of got me on. But I was still anti-political at that point. If I had met Michael Heitz at that point, I'm like, why are you guys doing all this? Like, dude, like politics isn't cool. Real anarchists don't do politics. We just, hang out in the woods. And I was a really big fan, still am a huge fan of Larkin Rose. But then I saw his debate with Joshua Smith. And before, I always used to support Larkin. Like, I'm like, yeah, he makes better points than this. He makes better points than this. All of his, debates were spot on, except maybe he could have done better with Warren Southern. But Joshua Smith, that was the first time I heard about the Mises Caucus. And he explained, look, you need to do something politically. If you hide in the woods, as appealing as that is, it doesn't, unfortunately, that they will come and find you. And that's not to say I still have respect for, tons of agorists. I still think Larkin Rose is doing amazing work. I still think Kokesh has done amazing work in the past, even though he goes crazy. I still think other people who are agorists, are doing awesome stuff as well. But I realized, especially after COVID, they don't really care. DeSantis, New Scum, any of these people, Sleepy Joe, Klaus Schwab, they don't care if you make a good argument about the non-aggression principle. They're going to do what they want anyway. So I decided I had to get politically active. I tried doing stuff with the Jorgensen campaign, doing signs and all that stuff. That didn't really work that well. I'm like, this messaging sucks, and I had to play damage control. I'm literally talking about software engineering here and talking to my friends like, look, I get Jorgensen made that BLM quote, but please listen to me. Look, what's going on in Yemen is real bad, and Trump did this, and he did this, and he was bad on Iran, and like, look, listen, just Jorgensen's. And I convinced some people, but I'm like, this is so much work. I just want the Ron Paul people back. And then I saw a Reason thing with Angela McArdle saying, look, the Mises Caucus signed up, joined, and then, hey, we recently took it over. That's kind of what got me like saying, hey, if I don't get involved as an ANCAP, but also do the political side of it, unfortunately, I don't see much changing. And someone made a good point, who's even a conservative. How are you going to take power away from the Marxists and the fascists and stuff? And to me, that's the best thing. So as far as I'm concerned, Michael Heiss built the most unique political force in existence. Just watched him on your show, and that really inspired me to be on that. So that's my background. Never really even thought I'd be involved in something like this. I just thought, hey, leave me alone and it'll all work out. Unfortunately, it doesn't. But my goal is just, hey, I want to see, even if it's not NCAP, Stan, I don't want to be taxed for anything. I don't know what the services are. I don't want any more crimes that are victimless, like drug war. I want to be able to own whatever gun I want or not. And I would like to wake up and say, hey, the Middle East doesn't have to be perfect. There's tons of ethnic groups that don't like each other. But I'd like to wake up and be like, no one's bombing anyone. America's not bombing anyone. You know, Saudi Arabia is not bombing anyone. This country's not bombing anyone. We're not, Israel and Palestine are getting along. That's really just my goal. So I think Mises is the best vehicle to do that. And that's it.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's a really great encapsulation of your history. And I think there's a couple things that really stick out to me, especially as someone who's also had a very long history working in different various, you could say, liberty modes. And that's that there's many different ways to reach people and to change minds and engage the culture. And to me, politics is one of those things, and it's definitely not for everyone. And I don't say that you ought to do that. It's not like, oh, you have to. It's just, hey, if this is something that really interests you as your passion and that's why you want to connect, great. You know what I mean? As long as you have a principled message of trying to upend state power, size, and growth, work toward decentralization, nullification, things like that. To me, that is just one more means of outreach and trying to stop, as you noted, these murderers, the psychopaths. And that's how I often frame it for people when people say, well, why would you do this if you're, a voluntarist, ANCAP, things like that. And for me, it's about trying to change minds and at a bare minimum, trying to end some of the actual direct violence of the state. Because for me, I'm like, at the end of the day, ending wars is something material in human lives, right? That's people being murdered. I'm sorry, but I would like to see the government, even if it's not immediately being abolished right away, ending the mass violence in terms of just killing people and things like that. And so for me, that's such an important thing to promote and to change the culture on, that is itself to me a worthy endeavor of just trying to inject the anti-war message in the political arena, just like Ron Paul did, inspiring more people to say enough is enough. And then, of course, again, it doesn't mean, oh, politics is the end all be all. It just means, okay, you're hearing it in the political arena. Now, what are the actionable things that you do after that? And that's, multitudinous. There's many ways, you think about doing those things, as you said, whether, agorism or people just choosing alternative businesses or people choosing alternative means of communication and things like that, thinking outside the state. So, I really appreciate your sharing that history and that development and recognizing that there is a lot to be done, work-wise in many different arenas, and the government is not just going to simply go away because most people don't believe it. I would say actually the empirical evidence is that the plurality of voters who are eligible to vote don't vote, right? That was very obvious before 2016. Most people voted for nobody. They didn't even want to participate. But politics is run by a small insular group of people. And no matter what, as long as there's people participating in that way, they're going to enforce their violence because they don't care if most people don't even want the government. They don't care if 99% of people...
Yeah, that's the thing people don't get.
So
Yeah, and that's the thing people don't get. And I found an economist, I don't know if you've heard, is Peter T. Leeson, and he really explains that, like, look, listen, I can say, like, all my friends are libertarian and conservative, and they don't want government or big government. And I think he'd say at the end of the day, look, there's concentrated benefits because there's people at the top who have millions of fake Federal Reserve notes, which still do something. Even though they're printing it, but they have, fake Federal Reserve notes and lots of other resources they can give. You can only give one vote or a little bit of donations, which adds up. But someone from Raytheon can lobby whoever it is and, start the next war, start, controlling something. So the fundamental problem really comes down to that there's concentrated power at the top and there's concentrated benefits and there's dispersed costs. So it really doesn't matter. People try and say, like, oh, okay, most people don't like, Biden or Trump or whoever. I personally voted in 2016 for Bill Weld, so I'll take that to Judgment Day or whatever. Yeah, I get it. I voted for a Raytheon lobbyist. I'm not happy about that. But I will say that, yeah, it's concentrated power at the top. And if there's no incentive to change anything, not going to change. And that's kind of what I realized. It's not that good actors, bad actors. If you find incentives to make things change, things will change. And I'm trying to figure out through rational choice theory and studying these Austrians, what incentives do people have when they do things? And based on those incentives, how can you change them so they mitigate violence, mitigate coercion, and mitigate people getting involved in other people's business? And I think that's a worthy endeavor, whether you do it through political means, through the Mises Caucus, even through other means, whatever it is, or if you do it through agorists. And there's a lot of really good agorists out there. There's a lot of really good market anarchists out there, Larkin Rose being one. I definitely think Eric July is excellent in the comic book space and getting out the message of, like, what are you talking about when it comes to this character or that character, like we were talking about yesterday. Ashton Birdie's another good one. Burning the Trump hat was pretty iconic. That to me was pretty good because most people go Trump or like, help get me out. I need to stay here because of something, and that was really good. So good videos there. And there's other agorists that I'm friends with that are really doing a good job. I just met a dude who said insanity is fun. So I'm of the opinion, if you're trying to decrease state power, it's worth working with you, whether that's someone on the right or even someone, and I know Max is going to yell at me, but hey, look, if an anarcho-syndicalist wants to, like, end the drug war, I will work with them just to do that and nothing else. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a big difference between issue coalitioning, the idea that you're working with others for a specific narrowly tailored end, which, in these cases, we're talking about trying to upend state violence or trying to reduce the actual harms, in terms of criminalization against people. I mean, yeah, you could work with anybody on that. I think the LPMC is a good example of that issue coalition building. And I don't, of course, have any problem with that in terms of saying, hey, you want this, like ending the drug war, ending the wars abroad. Let's work together to promote this thing, right? We both agree here. Let's get this promoted front and center. Let's get more people on board with, stopping the wars abroad and at home. I mean, to me, that is just such an important endeavor because it's a real cost in human lives. Some people could talk about, oh, well, government takes your money and this or that, or makes things more difficult to start a business. Yeah. Those are tough things, and that does affect your well-being and potentially your life in terms of, the resources taken, but you can't undo the drone bombings. You can't.
No, yeah.
There's no
I can always make
murder.
Yeah. I can always make more Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will go up. So I'll probably make I can sell an NFT. So, okay, fine. Like, taxes is one thing. I can potentially get more guns, somewhere else. So you can undo most of the bad things. The good thing is you can undo most of the bad things the state has done. But yeah, when they kill someone or hurt someone or do something through red flag laws and someone's gone or something's permanently destroyed, you can't undo that. So that's, to me, my main thing is just educate people. And funny enough, not even going to ANCAP stand, but if you look at the Constitution, I really Max challenged me, like, actually read the Constitution, don't just say, I'm an ANCAP and call it there. And I looked at it, some things that are interesting, like if you're not at war, which we're currently, there's no declaration, even though we have proxy wars in Ukraine and Yemen and all those places. If you have no declared war with Congress, you shouldn't have a standing army. And to me, that's common sense. Like, what do you want a standing army, especially with the absolute winners and puppets we have? I really don't want a standing army during times of peace, which I would consider we are, even though we're being involved everywhere else. We could just stop being proxy conflicts. And then with police, you actually need a electable sheriff. Now, that doesn't make police great, but I will say this: if you have a sheriff that you have to elect, it gives an incentive that, oh, if I mess up, I'm not going to get reelected. So if I, for an example, everybody's making the joke now. If I disturb Tim's show and they're recording constantly, people are going to see that. People know who Tim Pool are. I'm not going to get reelected. I want to get reelected. So at least it kind of mitigates that problem. So I would say, at least from my perspective, that looking at the Constitution, looking at Murray Rothbard's work, looking at Leeson's work, I think we can find ways to at least mitigate violence, because that can't be undone. And then we can figure out ways to permanently solve that. And as far as I'm concerned, that just comes down to reputation, signaling, and customary law.
Right. And I think that all a part of that too, to me, that's important. I think a lot of people don't really take into consideration is that no one's going to upend the state or end the state themselves in terms of the government, right? The government's not going to abolish itself outright. They're not going to be like, let's just abolish the whole thing, right? But what is more realistic is having nullification and secession movements and strapping down the ability for the state to have an effective monitoring and theft system. There's ways to try to subvert or just make it more difficult through law, through policy, or through conflict as among different jurisdictions. And to me, I think that's something that's very valuable for even people who are apolitical or agorists, purely because to me, it's like, hey, don't you want to make it easier for you to do what you do without the government breathing down your neck, right? Wouldn't you prefer to be like, yeah, it's harder for enforcement, right? I want the most difficult rules applied to the government trying to go after people. You know what I mean? I want it to be very difficult for them to actually meaningfully enforce victimless crime laws. Obviously, with the ultimate goal of them being abolished. So to me, that's what I look at. I think of it as how do you frustrate these things? How do you make it more difficult? How do you inject in the discourse the alternative messages that suddenly make these people like, we got to pander more to libertarian ideas if we want to stay relevant? And that's, I think, a very powerful thing that is often underutilized and is really just getting, its real first big push, I would say effective push with the LPMC and other people in that zone. And I think that if there were people who were more open to that idea and realizing the pipelining, if they were more, just at least tacitly supportive instead of just, being antagonistic, I think that would go a long way to helping people actually move down that strategically and meaningfully. Because not everybody goes from day one, a big statist Republican Democrat, to day two, I'm absolutely an anarchist voluntarist. It can take years, because the more you've been brainwashed and indoctrinated, the more there's stuff you have to overcome in your head. And you need good speakers. You need good educators who help people undo the programming. So, I think that when you talked about your history and the thought processes you had to go through, the people you learned from along the way, I mean, those are all stepping stones.
Yeah, and definitely I was talking to the Captain America, Spike, at our state convention. And one thing I kind of asked him, I'm like, all right, Spike, he's like the most personable dude in the Libertarian Party. Like, he'll actually sit there and be like, hey, how you doing? One day he's just talking to me about I had some fish and I had, this salad. It was pretty good. Me and Tasha are doing that. Really, I talk to a lot of libertarians. He's really down to earth. He's really the most personable guy. Just to, if I was going to talk to someone, hang out with Spike. And one day I'm like, so who got you into this? And he said a guy named Matt Kibbe. And I said, really? And he's like, yeah. He said he was kind of neo-conny back in the day. And he got mad when Ron Paul actually won that debate with Giuliani. And he said, hey, this guy named Matt Kibbe woke me up. And I actually found out recently who that was. I'm in the mustache curls. But he said it took him, Spike, it said it took him a while. I don't know how long. I didn't ask the duration of when you went from neocon to anarchist, but that's a pretty big jump. To me, if Spike can, people with honest convictions like Spike can actually do that and then run as a VP and, keep going. And, he has You Are the Power Now, which is pretty amazing. Then I'm really excited to see what other people can do. And as far as, just bringing people, just one podcast at a time, one speech at a time, one door knock at a time. And then people are like, oh, okay, I'm interested. And also affecting culture, making movies, making music, showing people backwards. Because some of my friends in the music industry are really, really, really super, super like left. They don't even believe anything bad's happening with CRT. I'm being honest. I think it's just, they're just teaching some alternate history or something.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, okay, fine. Check out Backwards. And they're like, ooh, it's like metalcore, it's rap, and this is pretty cool. Or check out like Jack's rap video, and I showed that to people when they're like, oh no, the medical procedure that the establishment likes is, they're saying like, oh, it's completely good. And I'm like, no, check out some of Jack's videos, check out Bad Wolves. And through that, I think those little just kind of nudging people like, hey, there's a better way to do this. They eventually come over, even if they were kind of like hesitant at first. And I was hesitant at first when I heard about anarcho-capitalism. I said, well, all these people, even in the LP, are telling me anarchy just can't work. But to me, I really think it can improve social welfare. After I found Dr. Leeson, though, and he's like, hey, look at Somalia pre and post, which they never, ever told you that. And I'm not shocked that the mainstream media won't say that, but it actually improved. And people like, would you move there? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Not America to Somalia, but if you lived in sub-Saharan Africa at that time, that's probably the best country to live in after the government was gone. And that's not saying it's Disneyland or, an amazing place to live, but relative to the institutional alternatives they had, that was the best place to go. And I started thinking, wait, if warlords who are not good people, who violate the NAP, even if you want to call them microstates, it's more decentralized, can figure out ways to get along primarily through like their custom, then we can figure it out too. And that's why I started, like you're saying, kind of nudging people to like, hey, I get it. Maybe initially it doesn't make sense that I say all taxes should be voluntary, because that scares a lot of people. Or people ask me like, oh, Kareem, well, if all taxes are voluntary, how can I deal with, I've heard, let's build the roads. How can I deal with security? How can I deal with, anything, welfare? And I say, I don't know the exact answer. It's not a cop-out. I go the Eric July thing. I don't know how the road, and literally my bandmates asked me this, how will the roads be built? I don't know how they'll be built. But what I do know is someone who's doing it will have the incentive to do it better, because they're not doing it through coercion, and they'll have actual customers. And I said, like, hey, it could be Domino's saying, we can't deliver pizzas. Let me fill in potholes, which did happen.
Right. Yeah. I think that's all a part of that incrementalism, that there's quite a few people, I'd say just most people, really. I think it's actually more unrealistic to think that most people do major intellectual jumps in short periods of time. But most people have to have it incrementally, because there's just so much intellectual baggage that they have from public school and the media. And for most, that's coming out of the left-right paradigm and saying, okay, you know what? Both these parties are just garbage. They keep doing the same things of saying they're going to help people, and they just spend it on war and debt and all this other stuff. And so they need that first rung. They need that first, kind of gradation of moving away from that paradigm. And so if you have really good speakers and educators and thought leaders who are in that space in the transition, at least in the political realm, then you have the opportunity for people to actually hear the answers to, oh, well, how do roads get built outside the state, or how is medical services that are charitable provided with if the government doesn't have Medicare, Medicaid. You need people to be able to actually have the chance to hear those things. And I think that some people who are just so steeped in this for so long, they forget what it's like to be someone new and have so many questions and not have the time to go through all of them, like, in 5 minutes. For them, it will take years of hearing the answers at various events or conferences while they, play in a new realm, in the political realm. It can take a very long time for someone to actually have the time and resources, the mental bandwidth to overcome each of their objections that they've been brainwashed into believing in many cases. And some, educationally, they also may have independently justified it. They may have thought about the reasons, but more often than not, they haven't thought about the alternatives in an intellectual way. They haven't actually thought about the economics, the incentives, and the comparatives of what exists already. So a part of that, and what you're mentioning there, is being able to have those tools and resources to share with people who are questioning, because they recognize, okay, this is not working. If they keep saying, yeah, we're gonna make everything good, you're gonna have more wealth, and then it's like inflation's up, they say 8%, but it's really like 30%, and people can't afford to put gas in their cars, and they're saying you're gonna eat bugs, so people are getting to that point where, like, okay, yeah, this is not working for me, so you need those stepping stones to move forward. So I definitely appreciate you being a part of that in your own journey. You paid it forward to connect people with resources and speakers and even, entertainment things that actually tie into, educational opportunities, like you said, with Eric July's music. Absolutely. So
yeah, that's what I like doing, because I figure if I enjoy it, I also want to make it fun too. I don't want it to be like, and that's one thing the MC does. Like, to me, we all have fun. When I hang out with Luke Enzor, when I hang out with Michael Heiss, when I hang out with like Kyle or, anybody, or you or whoever it is, I want to have fun. Granted, yeah, there's sometimes a business, but you also want to make it enjoyable. I don't want it to be like, read this thing on Milton Friedman. That's the one issue I have, with some Austrian economists. I've even joked with people, what if I just, made a channel where I'm just like a down to earth dude sitting in like a chair, like, all right, let's talk about this economic thing. Because sometimes I get it. Like, I had some friends after COVID say, let's look at anatomy of the state. One of my friends even put it up on Twitch, which was cool. But the biggest issue is sometimes it's, a little bit dry. So I try and have fun with it, share the resources so people enjoy it. And to me, by doing that, I'm spreading liberty, I'm having fun, and I think that's a pretty good endeavor. What I'm excited to see now is, especially that Mises has significant control over the party, is what can we do to actually mitigate some of these issues, like, the high gas? What can we do because honestly, Pennsylvania, right here, we have gas reserves. We could easily tell the federal government, no, we're doing our own thing. People think this is crazy. Hey, in California, where Angela's at, they said, we're not going to follow your immigration laws. Okay. Not looking to move there. Texas, Alaska, my boy Layton's at, they said, oh, well, he's coming to Florida to hang out with you. We're going to hang out at Yale, but they said, we're not going to follow gun laws. Okay. Sounds good. How about we just say at Pennsylvania, we're not going to follow energy laws, and we don't care what environmentalists think. And that doesn't mean I don't care about the environment, but let's be honest. If we have oil reserves and we're not using them currently, let's use them and then, hey, explore different options in the future. But there's no reason gas has to be expensive. There's actually no reason food has to be that expensive or anything. To me, I think there's proof, and I'm not a fan of him. I don't like the guy. I think he's a complete statist. He's a bad dude. I was telling people, even people on the authoritarian right, don't like him. But look, Vladimir Putin backed his currency by something tangible, gold. And I think that they're looking at Bitcoin. Now, that's not an endorsement really of anything he's done, but he backed, and I'm being real careful how I say this, he backed the ruble, which to me was backed by nothing, is just backed by printing, by an actual physical, tangible asset. And if we did that at a state level, I think you'd start to see things kind of even out. Like, okay, we're going to back it by lumber. We're going to back it by, it could be anything, bottles of water, anything that has, I do believe in intrinsic value. Some economists don't. But if we just back things by real money and we tap into our own energy reserves, We don't even need to be dependent on other countries, so I can make the populace happy, and I can, decrease gas. We can fix a lot of these problems, but people have to know what the problems are. I still see a majority of the left, and even some people on the right, say it's corporate greed, man. It's corporate greed. There's greedy people in corporations. I'm like, there have always been. I don't like the term corporation because that's a government classification of collectivization. But look, people are self-interested by nature based on incentives. The thing is, and people want to make the most money by doing the least amount of work. That, like, none of that shocks me. Now, occasionally get people who work really, really, really hard and just go at it, like Angela, Michael Hayes, Joshua Smith, Eric Roth, that for a goal. But most people want to make money with the least amount of work. But I asked them, okay, that's all been true across the board. So why are prices still going up? There's always been greedy people. Oh, it's just, they're greedy, but they're so greedy. If they were greedy, wouldn't they want to give it to you at a lower price? Wouldn't they want you to, get as much as you can, and then they'd still make money? So they still are confused. And I'm like, look, listen, it's quite simple. The Federal Reserve prints more money, which I didn't even really want to look into. I just like Ron Paul saying, don't bomb Iraq. But then I looked into his Federal Reserve explanation. It's simple. We can't predict the market. The economic calculation problem will always exist. And if you just put more money in, but the same amount of goods and services go up. And everybody knows that because they did that in the Soviet Union, the end of Germany at World War I, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe. And other nations are really suffering from inflation, which to me, this all drives me nuts, because I honestly think this can be fixed by backing things by just tangible, intrinsic, whatever it is. Or you back it by something, even though gold or Bitcoin don't have intrinsic value, you can't infinitely print gold or Bitcoin. So at least let's do that. And by sharing these little tidbits with people, I think I can get them to say, hey, there's a solution. It's not necessarily, it's easier said than done, but there is an actual solution and we can do it. And I'm excited to actually get more people to realize, hey, we can do it, and then try some of these solutions out. And I don't even guarantee anything works. I'm just saying right now, we're not getting a good result through statism. So saying, honestly, with how bad the state has done everything, destroying the currency, killing millions upon billions of people, completely just destroying cultural institutions, saying statelessness can actually just improve about that outcome is not actually setting the bar extremely high either. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is important, I agree, to get people to understand that if you're already observant that some of these institutions out there within the state are not even coming close to producing the peace and prosperity that they claim that they're needed for. I mean, especially if you're in really terrible countries where things are objectively poor. And if you're in countries that maybe were well developed, but they are putting people into prisons for victimless crimes like marijuana possession, or they're in constant state of war and debt, it's easier to say, hey, they keep saying they're trying to help you, but do you notice how the debt just keeps going up, and they just keep on putting people into jail, and they just keep on doing interventions with, violence in the Middle East? Don't you think that eventually, this needs to be stopped at some point, because it's continuing to cause more conflict, and you're getting poorer and poorer? And I agree with you that getting people to think outside that status paradigm is definitely key. And I think the examples, some of the things you gave, just the idea of just comparatives, right? You're talking about, with Russia, and they tried to back it with gold. And then, of course, the Austrian perspective is, of all value is subjective, that it's always about what each person they subjectively want. Gold, if you're thirsty about to die in the desert, gold doesn't help keep you from dying. You need water, that kind of thing. But the idea of just like having different types of ways to monetize based on the market and to provide people value, and how that is much more a closer approximation of actually meeting what people want if they're able to choose their own money based on what's most common. That's certainly much more ethical than the government forcing everybody to take Federal Reserve notes that are just, debt to that institution. And essentially that dollar, being backed by just what is the force of the state, that is any value it would have is just that the government demands payment in it. and the government services are just some type of abstraction of an approximation of what is valued in the market. Obviously, they're not ever going to be matching it because it's not market based; it's force based. But it only has a value, to the extent that it has any approximation to what would be desired in the market. So getting people to understand these economic principles of subjective value, as you said, the idea of not being able to centrally plan everything because of the economic calculation problem, that you can't immediately ask everybody every moment, like, hey, what do you value right now? What do you want to eat? And like know exactly what every person wants and changing at any different moment. It's not possible to do. And that's why money makes sense, because you can choose based on what's available. So I completely agree with you there.
And yeah, I have my friend Konstantin Davinsky, who said he was part of, he left the Soviet Union and stuff like that. Hey, Fo, what's up? And there's a lot of conservatives drive me nuts. So like, the Soviet Union fell because of godlessness. I'm like, you don't think anybody, and I know people in China, secretly practice religion and things like that. I know there are people who, even in communist countries, are probably like, hey, let me hide my gun in my Bible or my Quran or Torah or whatever it is, my scrolls. Or so to me, the Soviet Union principally fell because they couldn't calculate what they're doing, because you can't. Like, I guarantee you, like, even we had the discussion on Bitcoin. I don't know what Bitcoin's going to do. I can get the best people ever. I can call Michael Saylor and say, what do you think's going to happen? And there are people on YouTube all day making all this. You can Google any or YouTube any, coin, and they're going to tell you, oh, Shiba's going to explode $1. This is going to explode. If you look at, or this is going to crash $1, like, or Bitcoin's going to crash, and then this is going to crash. And I'm like, or it's going to go up. I don't even know the next hour what the price of Bitcoin will be. I know that you can't create more, so that's pretty cool. And I like that you can trade around, but I don't know what it is. So that's why the economic calculation problem to me is central to having a healthy economy. Is you just say, I don't know what the heck the market's going to do. The market does weird things, man. When I was growing up, people got pogs. Some dude sat in his garage and painted like goofy paint like jobs on these little cardboard things, took a metal one and threw that. If someone told me this is a business idea, I'm like, please, like, leave me alone. You're smoking something, not giving me any. But hey, that worked. And then Furbies came out. Didn't get into that, and that worked. And then I got into yo-yos, and I'm like, what? Why are yo-yos so big? And I started realizing, hey, I don't even think subjective value is really a theory, as almost it is just a fact. And right now, I have a buddy, I do videos on Fiverr. Like I said, I do screencast videos, and I'm doing a lot of NFT reviews. And he said, look, I have these pictures of, they're really cool. They're like 3D monkey pictures to talk about the environment and things like that, which I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And if you help me sell them, I'll help you out a little bit with, what you're doing. And I said, okay, looking maybe after I sell those to create a Mises NFT and some libertarian NFT. So I'm excited for that. But to me, NFTs prove that, look, it's subjective, because yes, I get it. The Babylon Bee can make fun of me, but if somebody has $1 million and they think that a token telling them that they have ownership of a monkey photo or a turtle photo or whatever animal you like is something valuable to them, and they want to buy that whole collection, they'll get it. And it's the same thing with baseball cards, magic cards. Some people look at them, they're like, well, why would anybody spend millions of dollars on NFTs? And I'm like, well, you collected baseball cards, Pokemon, Magic. So yeah, subjective values probably, and the economic calculation problem are probably the two biggest things. If people could get that look, value is inherently subjective. One guy is going to come up one day and like this, and one guy is going to the next day maybe not value this or see a different light. And that you can't predict market forces. You can actually figure out, or not figure out, but you can actually create a good economy just by leaving things alone. And I hope, because like I agree with Adam Williams when he said it. Do you know how amazing things would be? The wars is one thing. That's the biggest thing. But next, do you know how amazing it would be if there was no large scale wars and just some form of sound money. Like you could take $1 and you could probably like all those fun things you guys do in Florida. I'm like, man, I called Max one day. I'm like, man, they're doing all these really, really cool things. This is pretty awesome. Which I get to do too in my band, but here and there. But yeah, you could probably do all the fun things in Florida for, you know, 10, 20, $30. You could probably, people could afford to live in Miami and big cities, and they could just work 20, 30, 40 hours, you know, like Bernie Sanders even says, which is funny. I'll even reconcile with the Bernie bros. Yeah, I get it. If you're working hard, you should be able to live. It's not because of the crazy landlord, or it's not because of the corporate dude, but it's because principally your money keeps inflating faster than people can create goods and services. And if people can realize that, I think we can make a huge change, because they'll go, oh, what's this Federal Reserve thingy? And if I can get hundreds of millions of people to do that, I think we're going to fix a lot of things. And once you get rid of the Federal Reserve, Big Pharma's gone. The military industrial complex is gone. The prison industrial complex is gone. All these industrial complexes are gone. And then really you just have to work at the state level, get some meatcocks in there or some principal people, and get rid of some of these BS laws. And you're not in camp stand, but you're pretty close. I think you're pretty close.
And on that note of, changing minds, Sandra here says, even getting some people converted, it's unfortunately not going to outrun the masses that are indoctrinated every day, while hiding out the forest might eventually be overrun. The more, the stronger we have some freedom while still alive. If it works, the next generation is a place to go bigger and stronger. Future will be awesome. Need many different smaller decentralized communities. Well, right. It's, we're in this constant battle of changing minds, right? Because there is masses of people who are indoctrinated. And that's how come it's so important to do this kind of outreach, because we need to have that type of cultural conversion so that there are enough people saying, yeah, you know what? Perpetual war and our money being perpetually devalued in the name of saying that, oh, we're saving the economy by making your money worth half of what it was for 2020. Yeah, that's not working for me, So it's becoming easier and easier to get people on board with that.
I think so. I think so.
See it.
Now, here's the thing with the masses. Back in the Iraq war days, I remember everybody's like, yeah, let's go get them. And slowly they became like, I'm wary of Syria. And now I swear I could not find anyone. I bet you could go to the most crazy liberal communities and be like, do you think we should be involved in Ukraine or Yemen? And I haven't heard one person like, yeah, let's go get it. Maybe, I'm being hyperbolic. There's probably like one person like, yeah, do whatever the government wants to read, the BS on the mainstream media. But 9 times out of 10, people are saying no. As far as the masses, Michael Malice answered that question. He said, you can't win because there's a bunch of trees here. I think I've just come to the realization there's some people, which is not bad. I don't want to be political all the time. There's some people who just want to live their lives, and that's it. And the masses are going to go with who wins. So we got to win. We got to beat the World Economic Forum. As far as I'm concerned, the masses are just going to flip over one day and say, I was always libertarian. I bet you that'll happen. Once people like Klaus Schwab and all those people are gone, they're just going to say, oh, yeah, Kareem was always a libertarian. Were they? No. But, it doesn't matter. It's the same people. I had tons of people tell me after they studied World War II, I would have stood up for people in Weimar. Would you? And then the same people like, put on a mask, do this, go with the COVID regime, health and safety. I'm like, yeah, I think you might want to reevaluate where you think you would have been in history. That being said, I don't think we need the masses. And the reason is you only need 5 to 15% to actually overthrow or change the system. So that's all we need. We have a lot of people doing amazing work, and I think we can just take that to the next level. Even if the masses don't turn around, they'll just go with whoever wins. So I can win. I'm not worried about these trees, as Michael Malice says.
Right. And even where it's, difficult to proverbially win either intellectually or financially or politically, it doesn't mean that you have to win everything to see big changes. The whole goal is small changes in the aggregate turn to big. And that is especially true when you start to move away from like the federal zone, and then you get to the state zone, and you get to the county zone, you get to the local, city or town zone. And suddenly it's not as daunting because, you're not having big corporations and, and billionaires trying to fund, every little small town's city council person kind of thing, right? That these people have limitations to their time, resources, and money. And as much as it is intimidating what they can orchestrate, especially if they collaborate with different not-for-profit institutions or NGOs, they are still human and they still have limited resources. They're not unlimited. If they were unlimited, then this would be a foregone conclusion. They wouldn't have to convince anybody or try to use propaganda. They would just do it. It'd be over. You know what I mean? But the fact is that they are still using other means other than direct violence. And that's an evidence to me that they know that this battle is not readily won. They have to get people to want their enslavement so that they don't have meaningful resistance. And the more you can have people breaking away from that on a small level, even if it's just, a town nullifying, a state law or a federal law, whatever like that, if you start to have more and more of these small wins, you start to inspire a culture of defiance. And I think that, the 2020-21 situation was a great example of that. There was a tipping point where people eventually said, whoa. Okay, you know what? You promised me if I got my, first little stabby, and then my second that I'd be free. And then when the government's like, oh, we got to get more. And then people are like, wait. I didn't sign up to this, right? There's tipping points. The people will have tipping points, and eventually the tyranny will breed a reaction. And I think that the people miss that unless you're in like a true totalitarian state like North Korea, where they literally will just like kill people off right away, or disappear them. If you're still in a situation where that's not the case, well, then you have the opportunity to have reactions happen. You have the opportunity for people to say, whoa, wait a second, I didn't sign up for this nonsense, and to actually start to push back in coalition to resist those things. So making use of those things while we still have it, I think is so critical in terms of, using the relative, freedom of speech, the relative being able to spend and share resources with those who are aligned with our values, the ability to exit from the corporate status paradigm of those who are trying to, work with the government to force the selection of their products, moving away from those companies and saying, you know what? I can cancel my Disney subscription. I'm going to support someone, like Eric July or the Tuttle Twins or my comic series, whatever it is. People just saying, hey, we're going to start making that shift and that exit. It doesn't mean, you have to do everything radical, because some people are like, oh, you're telling me I got to change everything. It's like, no, it's too much all or nothing thinking. You don't have to change everything to make a big change. If your spending is, start 10% shifting out of it, that's huge when you aggregate that across tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and then next year it's 20% shifting your monies to something else where it's people who, are more in line with your values. Even if it's just a coffee company like CJ Roasting or something like that, or like Run Your Mouth Coffee, where it's liberty or libertarian owned, and you're just, okay, I'm going to buy coffee from these people instead, right? You're putting more resources into people who are out there actually promoting a message of liberty, who are in line with your values, instead of supporting, all these different institutions that are literally trying to be like, yeah, we're going to, basically erode your entire wealth and inflate your money, and then we're going to have the government force you to buy our product. You know what I mean? You could still exit that now. And I think if people don't realize that and really take a hold of that and say, oh, I can start actually just moving my resources bit by bit toward those who don't hate me, huge difference.
Just a little bit goes a long way. Like, heck, put $50 into Bitcoin, and put like 50 into Ethereum. That's not going to and that to me could go up, significantly now. Got to buy a dip. So that could be something that works, heck, try and grow some plants. Like I don't have a huge garden now, but I got some plants. I'm working on it. Next thing I'm doing is I was going over with Max, like, okay, what does this AR-15 do? And, learn a little bit about just basic firearm, safety, because there are people who don't know that. There are people who don't even know that, hey, it's not okay to point a gun at someone, even if it's not loaded. So learn stuff like that, just basic stuff. Learn some, maybe basic ways to defend yourself. Martial arts, I'm a fan of that, just in case something does go down. And then find some ways to just, stock up on food and things like that. You don't have to go crazy with it, in my opinion. You don't have to change everything. You just make a small change. I'm going to buy some crypto today. I'm going to get some gold. I'm going to learn a little bit of gardening. I'm going to watch one Eric July video. I'm going to watch one Stu Peters or heck, if you want to go crazy, watch some Alex Jones videos. I'm going to watch one David Icke video today. I'm going to go knock some doors and just for a campaign or something. Or if you don't have time, I'll quote Edward Snowden here, the first thing you can do is say you care. And then not everybody's going to be necessarily an expert in like everything and solving all these complicated problems. But you can donate time, you can donate resources to people who are trying to solve these problems, who are working to defend, your rights through science, through math, through alternative means, because no amount of violence, no amount of military force will ever solve a math problem. And like right when I get, for an example, once I get paid again, I'm going to pick up your book and I'm going to give Hector Bruce, who's running for governor in your state, like $50 or $100, just something to help him out. So that to me, and then I'm going to be knocking doors and try and get on the ballot so I can push the Republican in my area to pass, defend the guard. So maybe we can end the war in Somalia forever. I don't know why America cares about Somalia so much. It's the weirdest thing to me. But yeah, just convince people, hey, this is something we need to pass. We need to end the drug war. We need to at least Second Amendment sanctuary, get rid of these property taxes. Even if I don't win races or whatever, if I can, as Austin Peterson said, convince the other side that, hey, these are good things and my constituency would think I'm popular or cool or whatever they think by passing these, that's what I do. And those are just some things you can do. Or it can just be as simple as just, sometimes making memes that are funny. I remember during the those crazy riots at the end of 2020, there was this weird Wario meme that said, instead of defund the police, privatize the police, because that actually gives them incentive to do the right thing. And one of my friends who's conservative said, I never thought of it like that. Then I was sharing crazy memes with Joe Jorgensen and G.I. Joe, and I was just I would just share crazy memes out there, and people would be like, okay, I get the meaning behind that. And then I started more with like Max, like, okay, I'm going to make like really crazy ones. I did the Mortal Kombat one. That was one of my favorites, or like the greatest libertarian recovery ever. And people laugh about that. And they don't have to read like a Murray Rothbard book or a David Friedman book. They can just say, I remember like the Reno Reset or this, that, or some of the crazy stuff that just people post becomes, funny, like Let's Go Brandon, and then just put a liberty message behind that, and all of a sudden you've made a fundamental impact in the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. It just takes one little piece of information at a time, one little, intellectual move at a time. And I think if more people embrace that in all areas, you were saying, whether it's themselves doing something and or they are financially supporting those, doing good work. I mean, are all projects going to be successful? No. But if you're finding those that you personally value, just, look for the things you're like, that's my thing, whatever it is. Maybe you like Tom Woods' show and his podcast, or again, maybe like the Tuttle Twins, or maybe like the Mises Institute, whatever it is, that you are like, yeah, I kind of, this is my thing. This is my jam. This is what I really enjoy. Then support that. You don't have to be the person that changes everything. Just be either a facilitator of it, financial supporter of it, or again, if so inclined and you have the skills to speak or sign waiver or whatever, go in and do that. You don't have to do everything though to make a difference. And that's why I try to remind people is that you're not going to change the whole world, single-handedly, most likely, for most people, you're not going to be able to do that. But you can help change the world incrementally by being a part of that little bit of change for some people. And if you do that, and then your friends do that, and then they go on to do that themselves too, well, now it's an exponential growth, right? You change two people's minds, they change people's minds. To some, exponential function, eventually you're getting to millions of people. And so I think we're at that point right now, actually. We're at that point where we've passed the difficulty of trying to get, liberty values outside of kind of a small niche microcosm of nobody's, kind of thing. And now it's like, oh, this is mainstreaming. Like in terms of it's getting on mainstream networks and coverage. It's getting into the alt media platforms where that's like a regular recurring kind of thing with people being interviewed, even like Freedom Tunes with Seamus and stuff like that, getting on, Timcast and Michael Malice and everybody else. I mean, it's definitely shifted in ways that, are just never been seen before. Really. I've been doing this for a long time. It's never been seen before. This is
It hasn't. Have you, and you saw the picture with Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, and Rogan. which I like Rogan. Some things Elon and Jordan say, I'm like, okay, yes, no. But who took that picture is Michael Malice.
Okay.
Who's going to be Dave's press secretary. If so that's a cool thing. I didn't know that. They told me that at Reno. I'm like, wait, Michael Malice took that picture, and he's like a mainstream. I don't know if he has the keys to Twitter yet, but maybe he eventually will. The exciting thing is this is really taking off as opposed to the early 90s or 2000s. I'm really excited to see what I can do and be part of it. One candle can light 1,000, and by doing that, you can really save mankind, because you can say, hey, we were on a path to destruction with the state, and now we're actually on a path to figuring out what the best ways to socially cooperate are without using violence or coercion. So with that, thank you for having me on. And I'll just end by saying, look, there's still a lot of work to do, but buy our fruits, you'll know us.
Well, no, I really appreciate you coming on, the work you do, just, trying to move that over to window and change minds. Where can people find you, follow you, check out your work and your shows and things like that?
Okay. So I am on Twitter. I have 2 accounts, Kareem for Liberty and Kareem663. You can find me on Facebook. I have Kareem for Liberty at my page, or Kareem M. Maize. You can also find me on YouTube at the Essential Libertarians. I'm co-host of Conquering the Divide with Daniel Betro, and co-host of Outlawed Thoughts with Leighton Radner. And I've done a few interviews here and there, but this is the biggest one so far. So really thank you for your time, Jack. Thanks for, setting this up. And I'm really excited to see how we can push voluntarism to, the rest of America, the rest of the Western world. And who knows, maybe to even other countries and free them.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you, and I'm excited for the next things you're going to be doing. I know you're going to be doing big things. You keep growing and learning, so that's super awesome. So, and for everybody else, I'll be on your show actually tomorrow, I think.
Yes.
Exactly. And also, I think I have like several shows tomorrow. I think I'm Jason Bassler tomorrow morning. I got to double check that, but I'm pretty sure Jason Bassler will be going live too. So pretty stacked week with some awesome stuff. So we'll catch up some more on your show, and everybody else just, check on back for that next show that we have here with ZeroState. So take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you later.
ZeroState with Jack Lloyd.